Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the show. TFT talking about Eisenhower. Should be really interesting. Of course, I will give a fair warning a little bit later. But first, we're going to say hello and give a couple minutes to our other people to come up in here. Of course, we do appreciate you guys checking all our links out down below and being part of what we're doing, whether it be giving us advice on what we should cover or what we should do, or you want to be part of what we have here, being over on our Facebook group, FanSpeak, of course. We really are having ourselves a good time and enjoying our chats, and glad that you're part of it. So, first things first, I need to come over here and say hello to the most gentle and kind Kiwi I've ever met. I think he's the only Kiwi I've ever
Oh,
met, but I mean,
is there another Kiwi in this Discord? Who is it?
no,
Who the hell
it's
is it? I'll
you.
beat the shit out of him.
Actually, to be fair, I think you are the only person from New Zealand I've ever met.
Oh man, that's probably for the best, really.
You think? Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, if you start meeting other Kiwis, you're gonna be like, oh shit, Booster doesn't have a Kiwi accent at all. What the hell has he got? What's going on with him?
Well, we did watch a Kiwi movie yesterday,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a
And how
fine
many?
one indeed.
What We Do in the Shadows, great movie. And how many of those people sounded remotely like me?
Well, not at all, but they also didn't really sound like, especially Waititi. He didn't sound like he was a Kiwi either, even though he is kind of Maori, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a Maori boy.
Yeah.
A Maori Jew, apparently. Strange combination.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's not. Now everything makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, if you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, you should, because you'll understand exactly why Waititi was picked up by Hollywood. It's very clear the skill of this guy. The problem is, and I think Booster agrees with me, I want to see him do more of that. I don't
Yeah,
want Ragnarok. I want more of that.
not Thor. Yeah,
Yeah.
Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, it made me laugh, but that's not what I wanted from a Thor movie. You know.
No. I
And
mean, yeah.
somewhere along the line, it absolutely damaged Chris Hemsworth by convincing him he's funny.
Yeah, a little bit,
Somewhere
right?
between that and Ghostbusters, right? Someone decided to tell Chris Hemsworth that he was funny, which was totally cruel to the rest of the world. Because look, sweetheart, we just want you to take your top off, look buff, look cool, be badass. All right?
Yeah. Simple.
You're not very funny, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, that's right.
You're
But
pretty.
he's very pretty, and he's a workable actor. I mean,
Hmm.
he can get in there and do his job. He's not going to screw it up. He's going to get in there and do his job. But no, he's there for a reason. But
Well, I feel like Endgame was all his ideas. Like, oh, would it be hilarious if I was fat? No, no.
yeah, I mean, maybe. Yes, Thor was that. It was, dude. Endgame was absolutely a torturous thing to have to sit through. Not only did
Yeah.
we have the whole fat Thor, we had the betrayer, Captain America. We had this just rehashing of the same thing you did in Infinity War. It was nothing new or fresh with Thanos at all. I mean, oh my God, don't get me started. We're not here talking about
Oh,
the Marvel
we're not talking
conspiracy
about the game
theories.
again.
Damn it. Uh,
We're
and
talking
Rodwell
about
Stevens says
Dwight
he's here to
D.
learn.
Eisenhower.
Why? Well, I was kind of waiting for him to get here. I bet I might as well say why. You guys all probably see Model 3 as, being this really innocent, nice, happy, jovial human, right? But
No,
in fact, he's an insidious bastard. Yeah, yeah. Because
I'm aware.
yeah, that's true. But because he knows right well that if I get into the Eisenhower conversation, I'm going to have to make certain decisions of what I talk about and what I don't talk about, right?
Hmm.
Because that is one of those conversations that very easily, if you pull on those strings too much, just a flood of dreidels come falling out. If you get my hint.
Oh. Dreidel, dreidel,
Yeah.
dreidel.
And he knows it right well. He knew it. And he is laughing
Mm.
behind. I know he was. He was sitting there chuckling about behind a muted mic, because let's do Eisenhower history. All right, fine. And I'm gonna get into. I'm gonna bravely step into Eisenhower today. Keep in mind that I'm going to give these guys a couple of minutes to get in here before I start. But if you're easily offended or you have some kind of sacred cow around Eisenhower, you probably want to leave. Yeah.
So should I try to make sure the string is as anti-Semitic as possible, or should I let you guys just go off of that?
Oh no, you should
Right.
you should try to talk me down. You should. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
please.
Just
Please do it.
not because I'm offended, but because I don't want the YouTube channel getting destroyed. Even though somehow uh we're here still.
Yeah, well, we are, but and I'm not going to get that bad. I mean, I could go deep down the rabbit hole with it, but I won't. I'm going to skirt along it. But like I said, we're going to give got a couple minutes. I'll spend it. I'll start at 10 past the hour here, but because I know one of them is running late, and the other one I think he's probably fell asleep. But nevertheless,
Hmm.
Nick has a question. He says, "Booster, tell Chester why the new 52 was bad." Oh.
Um, I can't really tell you why the new 52 is bad. See, part of the reason is I'm still a late comer to comics, right? I think I admitted only really started reading them 2013, 2014, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I can understand people's grievances with the new 52, right?
Well, especially
It kind
later.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of got rid of everything that people were invested in for like 20 years, just kind of like threw it out the window, right?
Hmm.
These books pretty much had like the same themes and tones all across the board, right? They were very samey art, very samey,
Hmm.
edgy tone, and everything was trying to be a little mature and this ain't kid stuff no more. All right, trying to
Yeah.
take itself way too seriously.
Yeah.
I can get the grievances, right? But there are still a few books from New 52 that I enjoyed. I enjoyed Scott Snyder's run on Batman
Yeah.
for the most part, and I really enjoyed James Robinson's Earth 2. That isn't.
Mm.
If you haven't read James Robinson's Earth 2 from New 52, that is freaking excellent. Check it out. Seriously.
It is good.
For
I like
serious.
the Ashen comics as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, with
Hmm.
Superman. But I mean, I get that, and I understand, especially later, some of the things they're doing. I get people's argument. I do. I just really enjoyed it, especially in the beginning. Um, and maybe because I'm older and I've been reading comics for a very, very long time, for me to see something different and seeing them do it, which was seemingly a reboot of DC
Yeah.
Comics, I think maybe it's just the point of view is a little different.
I mean, it's a good jumping on point for a lot of people, which is
Mm.
what comics have been trying to do for the longest time, right? How do we attract new readers? It seems to be like a comic's biggest downfall.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
I think, hey, what's up, model? I think
Hey,
what they should have done, and I think they can still do this, doing the new 52 and doing a full reboot and jumping in and just full bore and running with it, I think is fine. What they should have done was at the same time had DC Classic, right?
Mm-hmm,
It,
hmm.
it create a new imprint of sorts. The new 52, boom, this thing, and then have your classic. And
Yeah,
when they do the new 52, of course, it was called that because they had 52 books, right?
that's
Uh,
probably still too much.
it probably was, but they didn't have to have the new 52. They could have cut that down by quite a bit, and they could have said, say, 30 of them in the new thing that they're trying to do, and kept the 12 of them over in the classic, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's what they should have done. But anyway, we're not here to talk about comics. And
Poor
once again,
model
poor
coming
model,
around
yeah,
nerdy comic talk.
stupid comic book people. Yeah, I know. Anyway,
Comics.
hey, model, what's up, dude?
I'm sitting here working away, and I'm going, "Hey, I think I'm supposed to do something." Oh,
Yeah,
it's Sunday,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all right. Booster came in here
and
and
just last
talked with
week you
me.
complimented me on my
Mm.
punctuality too.
I know. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm glad you're here though, because I was just telling the people that how much of a bastard you were. So.
Oh, good.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I was explaining to them that you guys think Model's all this innocent, sweet little cherry pie guy, and I was like, no, he's horrible because he knew saying, hey, Chester, let's do Eisenhower. He knew I was going to have to make decisions.
Sure.
Yeah, it's your fault. Just before we do dive into this model, are there any subjects that you consider taboo? Since you're the one that brought up Eisenhower.
Uh, there's nothing that I consider taboo, but there are subjects that I think are possibly troublesome, and they're
Mhm.
very divisive for a lot of people.
They
So,
are. They are.
and those are going to be hard to completely um, ignore because I think they are relevant to the man and to
Mm,
that period of history, and also
mm,
to some of the outcomes we've seen.
yeah.
So I don't know if you want to give a warning.
I am.
Um,
I already kind of did, and I'm going to do it again. And yeah, I have my little presentation I'll do, and we'll kind of go wherever we go. But yeah, it's
I
yeah.
can warn people in advance so that they can hate me in the future.
Mhm.
But I am a Holocaust revisionist. I do not believe the official narrative. So, and that does make people very angry, and that will make some people will then discount everything you say based on that. So, uh, just so there's no ambiguity, if we start talking about this, that is my position, and you know what, I'm fine with the fallout from it, and there will be some, but what can you do?
What can you do? And anyway, I'm not gonna. Let's just. You ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I'm ready at all.
No. Well, Booster's job is very simple. He's there to keep us off the precipice, right? So,
Mhm.
you do. Is there a safe word? Should we establish one?
Banana.
Banana. Okay.
Or how about oy vey?
Oy vey. That might work better, actually. All right, let's get into this. And yeah, no, this is this is one of those subjects that really. Let me see. Which one should I share with you guys? I have to give you something to look at. So let me do this one first. Yeah, let's do that one first. Yeah, hold on a second. Um, no, what's going on here? Sorry about that.
Oh, that silence! I figured we got thrown off the air already.
No, I just somehow did something wrong. I don't know. It happens. Let me go back over here and do this again. All right. What was I trying to do? Oh yeah, I was over here doing this. Okay. Let me come in here and I'll just let you. Yeah, no, I need to do this. I got to share. Oh, here's the share. That's what my mistake was. All right, and all right. Which one do I do? I want to do this, right? Okay, 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 okay. Now, all right, guys. So let me bring out this back up so I can see it. All right, good, good, good. And here. And sorry about that. All right, here we go. Let's do this. Try to be a little bit more. Oh, my thing is blinking, but that's all right. I'm going to be on the other side anyway. You guys can watch on the YouTube side if you have to. But now let's bring this. Let's get into this. Now, first of all, you guys, when you saw this, maybe many of you, and those of you who are listening later, you probably assumed that I was going to be doing this conversation. Eisenhower meets the Greys leader, right? And we have so many little great little videos we can do here. Here we go. Let's go ahead and play that guy. Let's see. We have some Greys coming up, and you know, ooh, that's genuine. Oh yeah, oh yeah, slow motion even. Watch it. Here it is. Wait. Oh my God, there's people there, and they're children in masks.
Oh
Don't
no.
tell anyone. Okay. But anyway, I am assuming that many of you thought that's what we were going to talk about. Because that's the only thing you ever hear conspiracy theorists talk about when it comes to Eisenhower, which is really odd to me. Because when in the conversation of Eisenhower, it's like literally the most irrelevant possible thing you can have a conversation about the man with. We're going to maybe teach you a little bit about Eisenhower, and I think a lot of you, if you take a moment and you think about America's presidents, and how many of them you know nothing about, which is most, right? I mean, who do you know about? You know about George Washington and his little cherry tree. You probably don't know that he's the one that started the French Indian War. I'm sure you don't. You might know about John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. Those guys were actually quite efficient fellas. You probably know about Abraham Lincoln and how much he loved the black peoples and freed them, which he did. Although most people don't seem to remember the facts that he kind of equated blacks to the dog on the porch. I mean, you don't kick your dog, right? I mean, why would you do that? That's
Ugh,
like animal cruelty, right?
that's just mean.
It's just
Yeah.
mean, right? But my point is, most people don't know nothing about the past presidents, hardly at all. I would say even the ones in recent time. Do you know anything about Reagan? Do you know that he went through the same nonsense that Trump's been going through? Did you know that? Did you know Jimmy Carter was?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely, dude. Did you know
Yeah,
Jimmy
they
Carter was
probably shot
horrible?
him.
They might have, dude. I mean, someone shot him, right? Of course, it was supposed to be just some angsty kid trying to get Jodie Foster's attention. Did I say something like that?
I
I
don't
did.
think so.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't.
maybe not. But oh my God, today on TFT, the crystal penises of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Thank you, Joe. Um,
Hmm.
you got to show that. Go over there and show that.
I got it.
I mean, et cetera, et cetera. I could go through all the presidents and make just little one-line quips at them, but the simple fact is Americans in general don't know anything about their presidents, and they did shoot Lincoln. Well, they shot Reagan too, dude. He was shot. Yeah, do you remember? But why do you think that is, model? Why do they know? Why do Americans know so little about their 45 leaders that we've had in our history?
Too much information to take in. I'm playing video games. Shut up.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
up until recent time, there was no method to really get that kind of information, and those government agencies operate under a lot of secrecy.
They do.
They've always worked very hard to protect presidents. Like now we know how much of a womanizer, like JFK was. May have been
Uh,
a good guy, a good president, but
mm,
he absolutely was a dog. But at
well,
that time, nobody knew that.
well, so was Eisenhower as far as that goes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
and LBJ, and
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean,
that's a great pickup line, right? Hey, how you doing? You wanna fuck the president?
That's fair enough. It's fair enough, Booster. But
Yeah.
and actually, everyone knows about JFK's womanizing, but most people don't know anything about Eisenhower's. And I wasn't even going to bring it up. I mean, that's
and
the
most of
wealth
them,
of
I would say,
information.
to some degree, they've all had, but the a lot of protection has always been put to cover that stuff up.
Yeah,
Now it's very difficult for them to cover it up.
it's true. It is true. But
We
uh,
also did have a media for the majority of the uh, the presidential history. We had a media that did have some kind of self-imposed ethics, and that is gone.
That is true. They have completely abandoned that, and that's one of the touchy subjects that I have to wonder whether I'm going to dive into or not today, because there's so much surrounding this particular topic. And Eisenhower is Einstein's kind of part of it too, isn't he? Damn it! But Eisenhower is kind of the perfect little button to push. It's like this innocuous button that you don't even know what you're getting into once you start diving into it, right? Because most people are like, oh yeah, that guy, he was president, and that's it. That's all they know, right? But we'll get into it. We're going to get into it. I'm getting into it. I'm beating around the bush, and I'm not pulling the trigger. Is what I'm not
And that's
doing.
my job.
Yes. So here we go. I'm getting into it. You guys ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Oh no. All right, here we go. Now, I do believe the conceit of this show, with Model and myself and Thundero as well, was really this point right here. And understand this is taken out of 19, I can't remember, 60 something. It's the last address of Eisenhower's president of the United States, and he gave like a little, I don't know, it was like 15-minute speech, and he said a whole bunch of boring, useless stuff as he usually did, which is one of the themes you'll notice that I'm going through here today. Understand that this is not this guy was supposed to be a great communicator. A title we gave to Reagan, and he proved it, right? This amazing communicator that would cheerleader and enthuse and be able to control all these generals and these world leaders and getting them moving in the right direction. This guy, if you go back and you watch all his speeches and you look at stuff, you'll realize he's a horrible speaker. His awkward, intonation is all over the place. He's really weird. I'll give you a demonstration of that later, but it doesn't fit, and you're going to see a lot of things don't fit today. With my ultimate conceit, but the conceit starts here. Would you like to read that, Booster?
Yes, I will. I'll do that. You want me to do it in like an awkward way, or should I just read it? I'll just read it.
Yeah, just read it. Yeah.
Just read it. This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry, excuse me, arms industry?
Arms industry.
Why is that one word? That's terrible. I hate that. It messed up my brain for a second. Arms industry is new in the American experience. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
That's about as awkward as he was. Perfect.
Mm-hmm,
Thank you. But all right.
Did
So
did he stumble on the word arms industry for about 30 seconds
he
as well, or
stumbled a lot.
just me?
He stumbled all over the place, which he usually does. That's my point. This is supposed to be this amazing communicator that could, control entire swaths of territory, just dozens of generals and world leaders. This is the guy. But if you go back and look at his speeches, even if you go to Stardust, which is supposed to be one of his greatest speeches ever, it's awkward and off. It's odd. His intonation is very bizarre. But it's just an odd point when he's supposed to be something quite different than that. So it's just one little note that I'm going to make throughout the thing. But model, I'm assuming I'm correct in assuming your conceit of the conversation, which is regarding the industrial complex comment, right? Military industrial complex.
Sure, and that was that was made later on. It was almost like a farewell warning.
Yeah.
And he's not the first president in, I guess you would call modern times, let's say the 1900s, that made a similar warning, almost because Truman did a very similar one as well, where he basically admitted he allowed the country to be ruined for generations.
Yeah, no. Truman is definitely part of this conversation, without question, and they're all tied together by some very interesting threads, which we'll get to. But he did say that. But I think the interest, what got people's attention so much is, he did make this point, which is the one everyone pulls out, right? But if you look at his whole farewell speech, the entire 15 minutes of the speech, it's all very soft. And it's very anti-military, anti-war, such and such. And you'd be, oh well, that's fine. Obama was kind of like that, even though he was a war hawk, and we give tons of examples. It's just a presidential thing to say. But the problem is his career, right? I mean, he is up until this very moment of this speech, the dude is an absolute military war hawk. So where's it coming from? And that's what put people on the back foot with it. And that's why this is probably this statement of his is probably the one thing that the young people know. They don't know anything else about him. They just know this statement, right? Or the alien thing. So it's really out of place, right? I mean, that's what throws people off. It's out of place for this man.
And would you agree that I would say he was a brilliant military commander?
Well, we're going to look into that. We're going to take a look at that, and we'll see.
Because some people disagree. Some people think he was just a tool.
Yeah.
But it's being a military commander is not just sitting at a sand table and saying move this here over to here. There's more to it.
Spoilers, model.
Oh, okay. So you're on. Yeah. There's some oddities involved.
A lot of oddities, dude. Yeah. And of course, you could go on either side of that. I'm not going to give a direct opinion, but let me lay out. Well, we'll go. Just keep interacting with me and popping in and agreeing, disagreeing, giving your own points, whatever you want.
But
We'll
mostly
see where it comes
agree.
from. Well, you just be a good boy and agree in general, and
Yeah,
just
mhm,
keep
mhm.
your eyes
You're
up for
right.
dreidels. We don't,
Oh my God,
spilling
Chesteru.
dreidels.
Dreidel.
Yes. All right. So now, like I said in the beginning, and I'm sure Model is going to be. We'll see what Model does. But yeah, let's move on from this conceit, because this is where the conversation lies. Is this statement from a man, and it just was weird to a lot of people because it didn't make sense. And let's try to make sense of it, because I think I might have a theory. Model, I'm doing something today I probably haven't done on TFT before. I'm actually theorizing today.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, what are you doing that for? Don't hurt your brain too much.
I'm just saying, I have a theory. I think maybe
Hmm.
I have an angle on why he did that. His last speech to the American people was unlike his entire life. Maybe I have an answer for it. Maybe. Let's get into it. Now, there's a lot of conversation, part of today's conversation we can't really get deep into. We just can't, because the channel would disappear within an hour. It just would, right? Unfortunately, because
Mm.
that's how much it's tied into a much greater conversation that you're not allowed to have. And the thing is this fella supposedly is directly involved in why you can't have that conversation. And that's an interesting part of the topic. So let me give you some suggestions, just a few. If you wanted to delve in deeper, because I can't. I would look into, this thing. What is this thing? World revolution. What is that? Yeah. And if you want to understand more about this, the depth of this conversation, a lot of things that were happening in the turn of the 20th century, you should understand what this is, right? And all the things that came with it, right? Another a little bit of reading I might offer for you to do would be this right here. It's called The Jewish Peril, and it was published in Britain by an actual journalist, and it cost him his life, by the way. But this thing is out there now. You can get a good look at it, and there was a lot of people who didn't want you to be able to read this, by the way. I would read this if you were interested in the topic of having a more rounded opinion. Now, I'm not saying any side is right or wrong. That's not my point. My point is educate thyself, right?
Well, if I may add too, Eisenhower wrote a very concise 2-volume
Yeah,
biography
he did.
on
He did.
himself, and it's not as easy to find anymore. But it is not, his recount of the war is nothing like what you think it is now,
No,
and
it's not.
what you've been told. And this is from the supreme Allied commander in Europe and the president.
Well,
And it's 2 volumes. It's incredibly detailed. It's very dry, very boring. It's a military man, but
mhm.
it is very interesting if you can work your way through it.
It is. And I actually have that prepared, by the way. Here's the one he's talking about,
Look
the
at this
crusade in
guy.
Europe. It's 500 now. Now, the point that Model is, very hesitantly trying to make is, here is the Dwight Eisenhower's crusade in Europe. It's 500
Crusade.
559 pages, right? Excuse me. We also had another book written by Mr. De Gaulle, Memoirs de Guerre, Les Appels, Les Unites, Les Salutes, right? 2,054 pages. And of course, the absolute voluminous manuals of Mr. Winston Churchill, the Second World War, 1 through 6, 4,448 pages.
Even harder to get through.
Now, I've read them all, by the way.
Have you? I have
Yeah,
not gotten. I
I
can't
have.
get through it.
Now, why do I show these three books? Well, of course, these are the some of the leaders of that. You know, Eisenhower for America, Churchill for Britain, and of course, well, no, sorry, De Gaulle for France. Of course, you know, we're leaving out the fact that he was a absolute dandy and a person who went Germans were in 1,000 miles of Paris. He's like, oh, you did a good job. We surrender. Yeah, okay. Anyway. Uh, the point that model is trying to make is in all of these 7,000 pages here, there's certain things that are never, ever mentioned. It's quite curious, isn't it, model?
Yeah, you would think, since it's the most important historical event in all of human history, that it would be mentioned in any one of those voluminous works of literature.
Yeah, you would think that certain points about, I don't know, chambers that gas could be moved through, or,
You wouldn't
yeah,
think that there would be zero mention.
they have
You
zero.
you might
Yeah,
expect
yeah.
that there might be a small, or it could have been minimized, or maybe
hmm
something not
Softened,
completely accurate, but you
right?
wouldn't expect zero
Zero, nothing,
from
no comment.
three
Yeah.
of the world leaders of the time.
Mhm. And if you're curious, what we're kind of dodging around, you haven't caught it already. We're dodging a word, a certain word. It's called. It starts with hall and it ends with cost, right? And nothing.
Who's
COST.
Yeah. And there's zero comment by these gentlemen and their recounts of World War II. Nothing. And now we could dive deeper into that conversation, but we probably shouldn't model. We really probably
not
shouldn't.
allowed to? Not allowed
No,
to.
I don't think it is a good idea, because it's been repeatedly proven that that topic is not open for discussion,
No.
even in America, and in some countries it is illegal, and you will go to jail for it. So,
Yeah.
Weird.
um,
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
usually you don't have to back up the truth with threats of
It's
prison.
it is strange. It is strange. But once again, if you read these articles, no, these voluminous books, you'll see what our point is. You'll learn more about World War II, at least from these the propaganda from these men's point of view, anyway. But you'll notice what we're talking about. There's no mention of the things that when we say World War II and we say Germany and we say Herr Adolf in any way, there's certain things that come to your mind instantly. Not a single damn word, not one, right? But this brings us back to kind of the reason, maybe some potential reasons why that became a later conversation. And I'll ask.
And real quick too, Chester,
Mhm.
just to add, because I think we both agree on this. It's not to minimize anyone's suffering.
No, God, no.
That was a horrific period of time for the world.
Oh, yeah.
100 million people died,
hmm
but it was people of all types, and I don't think anyone has the market cornered on human suffering.
No,
It was a absolutely atrocious time, and the 2 decades, 3 decades after that, that went through a lot of these countries and was a hellish nightmare.
it
While
was.
our country, the U.S., really prospered and
Yeah.
and kind of moved on with it. A lot of the world did not, and
No,
to this day
yeah,
have not.
and that's
So
true.
it
Yeah.
was hellish for everybody involved.
It was. And do keep in mind that after it was all done, America literally rebuilt the planet. I mean, literally did that. And we're going to get into some of the questionable things about that because let me just give the little connection to these books before I move into Eisenhower's directly. Yeah. There is a certain person that if you want to understand the turn of the 20th century and Woodrow Wilson and Truman and Eisenhower and Winston Churchill and famous generals like General Pershing or General Marshall or General Cox and all these people and what they had to do with anything, you need to, yes, I knew that would get you. You need to understand who this guy is. You know this guy, model?
Let's see. I am not on your screen. I'm sorry. Discord.
Bernard Maines Baruch.
I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this guy right here, if you want to understand everything that happened, all those wars, all those kind of creations of, hey, say, the income tax, The
No, you are not
IRS?
you're not showing a picture of an individual if you think you are.
I
He,
am.
he is on
I am
YouTube.
seeing it on
Yes.
YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
His screen share is all
Oh,
messed up. I
screwed
don't know
up.
for
Yeah,
some reason.
unfortunately, you have to look on the YouTube. I'm sorry. It happens. Discord needs
They're
to
already trying to tell us down.
grow up a little bit, but it'll be all right. But this fella right here is responsible for all those things, Social Security, all that kind of stuff. It comes from this fella. Now, this is a big old huge banker, and he's even supposedly maybe one of the lackeys of a certain Red Shield banking organization. But very powerful man in American history you've never heard of. Now, why is that? With all the influence and so many policy that you live under every day coming from this guy, you would think you would know everything about him. You would think it would be this prestigious political figure, et cetera, et cetera. But the I would say 99.9% of all Americans have never even heard the name or seen his face, let alone know what he did.
Well, I would make a statement that most of the people that actually are running things, most people have never heard of.
That's probably true, and this is one of them. Now, is this an actual I don't know what's the word. I guess they love to use the word Illuminati. Is he or is he just a lackey of that? I don't know. I would rather go with the latter than the former, to be honest with you. And don't sit here and think I believe that they still use the term Illuminati 300 years later, because they don't. They use things like Bilderberg Group and other words like that, right?
Trilateral Commission,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
Committee of 300, stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that.
But this is one of those. He's at least a peripheral one of those, right? And
He was a
understand
mover and shaker of his time.
he was, and he formed the 20th century. This guy did. All right, and I'm just putting his name up there because I'm not going to go into him too deeply. But he's another person you should do some research on, guys, because it's enlightening, right? Now, when we get into Eisenhower, now we're going to get into his life. I'm going to do segments, and we're going to move through, and we're going to do our best to discuss those segments. But I'm just kind of giving an upfront primer of stuff that I can and can't really talk too much about. Now, this is another very interesting little point when it came to dealing with Germany after the war. And understand, this was all set up before the war was even done, right? Now, this right here is Henry Morgenthau Jr. Now, another name you've probably never heard of, but his plan for Germany. Now, if you go through and read this here, you'll find out one, as with Eisenhower, absolute hate and utter disdain for the German people themselves. Now, I'm not talking about those SS Nazi peoples. I'm talking about the actual German
Citizens.
people. Yeah. And what they proposed and what they did was absolutely disgusting. Now, don't misunderstand me as I get into this little mini section here. I love America and I'm a patriot, but I'm also not blind, and nor will I allow myself not to see the things we have done, because we've done bad things and I'm sure we'll do them again. It's all part and parcel, and we can get into a conversation whether we should be that, should be greater than that. I get that, but it is what it is. And this is one of those examples. I mean, people talk about what we did to the natives. My God, dude, do you even begin to understand what happened after World War II? And I'm sure people don't model. I'm sure they don't. But
Or
this,
during
or during it, yeah,
what we did to the German citizens.
yeah. But this is
You
disgusting.
want to talk about holocausts and holodomors? I mean,
Yeah,
if you don't really want to have, I guess, less kind of faith in your fellow human being, don't look into it. But
yeah,
uh,
that's true.
that was a horrifying time for the world.
It was bad. It was bad. And America, came out on top of everything. We were in a quite an opportune position for that, and I suppose that's a good thing. But go read this book. It'll bother you. It'll bother you a lot, because this is actually what they implemented after the war, and it's pretty disgusting. And let me just give you a taste of one little thing they did. One of the things that one of the conceits of this book, and for Eisenhower and for many other European leaders, is the fact that Germany is this ultra warmonger that must be dealt with. We must break Germany once and for all, right? This was a general agreement across the board, and some of you might agree with it. You're like, hey, they got what they deserved. Fair enough. Fair enough. But the how many times when you're reading history model, especially around the World War II or this the beginning of the 20th century, do you hear the word the German warmonger? How many times do you hear that? I mean, how many times you read
Sure.
it? All
The war
constantly,
machine.
right? Constantly.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that financial interests all over the world, including in America, were funding the German war machine.
They were. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. Preston Bush was a major
Invested
funder of
heavily
German.
into it.
Yeah.
J.P. Morgan, all of the banks were involved. The Warburgs,
And
all of them.
And I'm not going to get deep into this conversation because, boy, God, will this get in us trouble. But I will make one little point. Preston Bush, Morgan, all those other people supporting Germany, what were they? Stout, devout Christians. Yeah, and that's about as far as I'll go with that because, boy, I'll get in trouble if I go down that road. Booster, you should be screaming at me right now. Do your job. No, Booster's he's out. He fell asleep. But anyway, take a look at this little chart. He did. He tapped out. Look at this chart right here, guys. Take a look at it.
Wait, I'm here. I'm here.
You're supposed to be protecting me from myself, Booster.
Oh, what are you saying about the Jews this time?
I was talking about Christians that time.
Oh.
Yeah. Which the joke of my point is that's fine. Right. But anyway, I'm going to get into some stuff today. You guys might find it a little enlightening, or maybe you'll just hate me. I don't know, whatever. But take a look at this chart right here. This is talking about from 1480 until the European conflict, of course, World War II. This is talking about how many military and aggressive actions were done per country. Where's Germany? Oh, that's it. It's way over here on the bottom. We're next to Holland. So understand that the amount of military actions in a 500-year period, Germany was as hostile as Holland was.
Yes,
Holland.
No one aggressors Holland. No one conquers of Earth Holland.
But I'm just telling you, that's the reality of the number, guys, right there. Look who's sitting at top. Look who are the ones that always make trouble.
The problem the Germans have always had is they're far too good at war.
They are good.
So when they actually are spurred to it, they do it totally, and victory is pretty common.
I mean, us English used to be pretty freaking good at conquering before we lost our balls sometime after World War II. It's like, ooh, maybe we're the bad guys. Oh.
Well, that's part of the sacrifice.
And now they're crying because Europe's being mean to them or something.
It's tied into all of this.
It is, dude. It is tied into all of it.
It's not just Germans. It's not just Germans. It's the ancestry and the genetic makeup of Germans that is hated.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's targeted for extermination.
And it's also the religion as well.
Not to get too deep into history, because I know Mottled hates it when we do, but it is an ancient blood war that spilled into industrial warfare in World War II.
It did.
The German people have been hated for thousands of years, or at least their ancestral heritage has.
Well,
First by the Romans,
going all the way back to the Gauls. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
And
it's been thousands of years, and these basically same people or derivatives of them have hated the Germans for a very, 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 very long time. Some of it's earned, some of it's not.
Well, and you can trace it back even, with the fact that the Romans really could never defeat Germania. You can trace it even further back to the houses of Babylon, dude.
Yeah.
You can. And of course, I had no intention of going back in that, and I'm not going to stay on it. But do understand that those houses of Babylon still rule the world today. You understand that, right? But I'm not going to get there. I'm saying, all right. My point was that Germany is nowhere near the aggressor they've been made out to be at all. right? And here's another little thing you might not have ever heard about, and it's kind of ticking into the conversation that Model and I have been kind of having here. And welcome, Thundera, by the way. You just jumped into absolute hell. Um, Eisenhower, death camps? No, not
Really?
America. We would never do that. Of course, you guys know a little bit about the Japanese internment camps, and we can argue whether that was a good or bad thing. Did you know about the concentration camps in the Philippines? Did you know about that? Well,
Sure.
well,
Yeah, absolutely.
or how about all the British ones? And all the other and every other country in the world that's used concentration camps to try to get their idea or point across. But these death camps right here, these are really bad. Now, understand that Eisenhower, which I'll get into a little bit later, he really hated the German, very, very much so, and he expressed it. And there's a lot of things he expressed that people, the general public, don't know about Eisenhower, which I think you might find a little bit enlightening. But what they did after the war is they captured all these soldiers, and they basically put these big fences around huge areas, and there was hundreds of these across Germany and France, by the way. And they just took the German soldiers and just dropped them in there. No buildings, no latrines, no towels, no food or water to really. And matter of fact, there were many points where they were trying to bring food into these camps, and Eisenhower turned it away. There was 100,000 tons of food by the Red Cross to go to these places, and he turned it back. He wouldn't let them bring it in. He did this intentionally. And of course, hundreds of thousands, nay, 1.6 million of these soldiers died from exposure and starvation in these camps. This is not my opinion, by the way. This is documented, right? And he did it in a very insidious way. Or did he? This is the question of Eisenhower. What did he actually know and what did he actually do? Which we'll get into. But this did happen. And I understand one of the worst, one of the more ugly points of these camps after World War II ended, was the fact that they went into all the little towns nearby where these camps were, and anyone they saw in uniform, they grabbed and threw them into these pens. And that included women, by the way. Now, understand they weren't like the Russians. The Americans didn't go rape all these women to death like the Russians did. So there's a shining point, I guess. They actually were treated better. The problem was they were put right next to
Hooray
the
for not raping!
hooray for not raping
what
to
a
death.
high standard!
Right? But they did have to sit in these compounds where they had more supplies and they were better treated. Right next to them were the men, and they had to watch these men starve to death and die right in front of them. That they did have to do. And understand that when the local moms and sisters would come and try to give food to these people, the ones who didn't get arrested and thrown into these things, they were shot by the American patrol. This happened so often that Eisenhower went to the new government of Germany to put out proclamations to all villages and towns throughout Germany that they were not to go do that because if you go over to those camps, we will shoot you. Okay. So this did happen, right? And there were a lot of little insidious things that happened. And one of those was, this is all against the Geneva Convention, by the way. It's completely illegal. And understand that there was plenty of people who still hold war crime intention against Eisenhower because of these actions, right? But another thing they would do is they took, not only did they steal all their coats and their watches and the American privates who were doing this, so much so that the Germans just called the Americans the American watch stealers was their nickname for our soldiers. But they also took their dog tags, right? And they melted them down because basically they're saying, oh, they're not soldiers, and they're a disarmed force, like a citizenry, and therefore the Geneva Convention didn't apply to them. And there's still hundreds of thousands of bodies we have not been able to identify, right? And the thing about the townies, the town folks, was anyone in uniform they were brought in, and that includes men, women, and children. But you have to understand something about German society. It's very similar to many societies outside of America, like Japan, here where I live, is a good example. Um, around between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, if you're riding around anywhere in Japan, and you're going to the grocery store, the convenience stores, all that kind of stuff, everyone's getting out of work and going home, right? And what do you see? Well, you see that guy walking over there. Oh, he's an electrician. Oh, that's a construction worker. There's a nurse. Oh, she works in an accounting office. And I know these things because they wear the same uniform. Everybody's in uniform here. It's what they do. Now, America, we would recognize a police or a fireman or a nurse, sure, but not everyone is in a what you would easily recognize as uniform. Many countries, this is not true. They do uniform themselves because it's about preserving your clothing. They don't have, as if you think about how many Booster, how many shirts do you own?
4 at least.
Oh, wow. Oh, there's the wrong person to ask that question. Thundero, how many shirts does your wife own?
Oh, God, 100 of them. She only wears 10. It's
Right.
ridiculous.
Now, in the past, this wasn't true. So a uniform was something usually provided by the company that there was easy for them to keep their own clothing clean, and it was just. And Japanese still do this as wealthy as they are. But my point being is, they threw all kind of civilians. Mostly, what was in here, civilians, not cops, right? Not soldiers. Sorry, and they died horribly and miserably. Let me give you a little statistic here. 7 million Germans died in the war. 12 million Germans died after it.
Yeah.
You ever heard that number?
Yes.
Yeah. Now I know there's people in the chat and people that might listen to this later, or people who don't care, that would say, "Yo, they got they got what they deserved." I get that argument, but that's a shocking number, and especially knowing that that's not all Russians murdering and raping their way across the German landscape, which they did. Of course, they murdered and raped everything. That was part of Lenin's policy. Anyway, but this isn't all Russians. There's a big chunk of Americans. Matter of fact, about half of that is attributed to the Americans, actually. Now, did you know that, Thundero?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. How many Americans do you think know that, though?
Very few. Very few Americans even know about the camps. Very few Americans even know that Eisenhower never mentioned anything about German brutality in that regard, and then he turned around and did it to them. I would say few Americans even know about the fire bombings that happened, which were the most brutal thing probably ever done in war.
Yeah.
Literally crisped whole cities. Yeah. Just burn them all alive.
Intentionally targeting civilians.
Total
intentionally.
War.
Not collateral. Yeah.
Total war. Yeah.
To break the morale of an entire country.
Yeah. And to
just demoralize them.
Yeah, and it's a really heavy and ugly conversation to get into. But it is what it is, man. It is what it is.
And it's not stopped. Technology has made it possible so that you're not aware of the hell that the superpowers are unleashing on parts of the world. It's not like we've changed as a people, like we became enlightened after this great world event, this huge war. The world's been at war ever since.
It's true. It's a nonstop thing. The military-industrial complex, indeed. Yeah. And once again, that's our conceit with this show. Why did he say that? And my points that I'm making so far don't seem to help the conversation, do they? Just give me time. Give me time. Now, before we're staying on harsh on topic today, so we're going to go and we're going to deal with his youth. Now, before I jump into that, and we just go from the young Eisenhower to Soldier Eisenhower to President Eisenhower. That's what we're doing, right?
Oh, what's his origin story? Was he an artist too? Or
well,
what are we going for?
Possibly. But before I do that, would you, any of you guys, like to make any comments on all of the stuff I just gently strode across? Because that was gentle.
The only thing I would say is men like Eisenhower didn't see the world like normal people do. We see the world in a shade of morality. He didn't, and people like him do not. They see what is and what is not. Simple. It doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. They'll justify it later if they have to. That doesn't even necessarily make them evil. Depends on the target and why they're doing it. But people, elite people, genuinely powerful people, That's how they see the world. They see what is and what is not what not should and should not. They don't care about that. That's largely irrelevant to them. They have goals and they go and get them. He was a complicated man, insofar as it's hard to judge him because he's long dead. But he did do some things that, through a normal person's lens, were pure evil. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the people he was not so much doing them to, but doing them because of, weren't also evil. But at the end of the day, you're doing evil. That's really all that matters.
Yeah, that's fair. Model?
I don't have a lot to add other than it's I think it's difficult for a lot of people. I don't want to say most, because I think people are starting to come around, but that to actually be confronted by real evil, now that's relative, because it's your morality is based on what is agreed upon by a society. You know, we've some societies are very warlike, and they just the most important thing is to crush your enemies and hear the lamentations of their women, and that's normal.
Yeah.
Right? So, but our morality is such that our citizenry generally thinks these things are wrong, but our leaders don't. So, just look at our law enforcement. They'll kill you in a heartbeat. They will not think twice. They won't feel bad. They won't even think about the people they killed the next day. They move on, because it's a different mindset of feelings not being involved. Emotions are not involved. And to some degree, I think there has to be a level of that in order to make some of these decisions, because in order to make a decision that may kill some people, I think you have to be able to set that aside in order to be able to continue to function. So there is a level of sociopathy that I think is acceptable in some of these positions. Like, the president of the United States has to be able to say, we have to do this. People are going to die.
Yeah, that is a fair point. Yeah. It also helps that you are tell all of these people from the police up that you're dealing with the plebeians, right? And it helps.
Yeah.
Sure. And there is a lot of effort that is put into dehumanizing.
Yeah.
So and we're seeing it now with where even the normal rank and file will say, well, if someone's a racist, then they really should just die. They don't have any rights.
That's seemingly the movement forward, isn't it?
And that's where we are as a society. And I would also caution people to, if you don't have an interest in history, you might just want to, just kind of do the best you can right now and enjoy it, because in the timeline of human history, it's not been enough time for us to evolve or become enlightened as a people from World War II, World War I, and all these other things that have happened. And we are way overdue for another one.
Yeah,
overdue. If you put everything on a graph and you look every 60 to 80 years, there's a major conflict that involves the world, and we are way overdue.
That's true, and
they're saying we need to get it out of our damn systems.
Do we, or do we need to try to be better and push past it?
Look at how toxic and venomous the online communities are. There's a seething rage that usually at these big events get it out of their system. They get everyone to unify over something, and some of that stuff gets kind of just set aside and forgotten.
All right, let's just find a nice big field, right? Get all these guys that want to do their little wars. Let them have all their their newest gadgets and everything, to show off and everything. Just get it out of your system. Just go wild.
Yeah,
go out
fields,
there, fellas.
Death camps. I think we covered.
Well,
that
they will do it again, but they won't send their children and their loved ones.
Yours,
They're going to send yours. Yeah,
yeah,
because you are
that's the part I
labor.
don't like.
You're just a number. You're just labor. You're cattle.
And do keep in mind that
Don't
historians
worry, boys. I have
generally.
great excuses to bounce from those wars.
That's we all do, but do keep in mind that historians have a general agreement that it takes about 100 years for a culture, and in this case, a world culture, to get over a major war. And we're not there yet. And of course, we've had many wars in the interim. And as Model has stated, and I will agree 100%, those interim wars, Korea, Vietnam, and of course on into the Middle East, they're not a new thing. They're a continuation of a thing, right? Especially Korea and Vietnam. And you'll see how involved Eisenhower was in both of those endeavors, actually. But let's move on. Now, this next hour here, we're going to break into three segments. We're going to have a short, much shorter, very short, young Eisenhower. Then we're going to have a Eisenhower the soldier, and then we're going to have Eisenhower the president. All right. So let's get into Eisenhower the boy. Anybody want to tackle that? I mean, I can. I could sum it up in like 30 seconds, but you guys can go ahead if you like.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Just take that.
Golden boy, never did everything wrong. The perfect student, the perfect athlete, the perfect everything. hmm And he even
That
learned
just sounds
about life.
just like me as a youth.
I know,
Wow.
right? And even his brother had an accident and lost an eye, which taught him about responsibility. That's his
Yeah.
cherry tree, by the way. Yeah, if you go and try to research him as a young man, yeah, just perfect golden
Almost
boy.
groomed.
Yeah,
Almost groomed.
almost. You're spoiling again there, Model.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh no, was he diddled? Ah.
I don't know about that, but yeah, golden boy, perfect in every way. So I think unless Thunder wants to add something.
Nope.
Okay, I think the best place for us to start is West Point. Okay. Boom. Here's a letter from Joseph Bristow, a senator, and this was his a letter of intent, and of course, in order to get into the major military academies in America, I don't know if you're aware of this, you have to have a congressman or senator back you, right? And
Correctamundo.
Correctamundo. And of course, we're talking about West Point, where he went, and Joseph Bristow is the one that signed off. Now, I feel a little bit of failure on my part during this week as I put together. Understand there are 46 slides in today's presentation. Mhm. But I really tried to find a connection between Senator Bristow and some of those more insidious things that we kind of are skating over here a little bit, particularly connection to this fella right here. I really looked deep, but I couldn't find anything, and it really looks like Eisenhower came into his auspices because he was brought in by General Marshall into this guy's aura. So I couldn't find anything. I really looked, guys, but I couldn't find anything. So as far as I can tell, Senator Bristow was just a boring, really boring senator. Matter of fact, the only memorable thing with him was Vice President Marshall, who was sitting in the Senate listening to one of this guy's long-winded speeches. He spoke loud enough so the whole chamber could hear because he was talking about what was he talking about? He was talking about the problem with America, or the trouble with something. And he said, the only problem with America is you can't get a 5-cent cigar. Marshall's notorious wit. But that's it. I couldn't find anything else. But nevertheless, this is the guy who moved him into the West Point, and that's where things begin. Now, when he's in West Point, here's the thing. It's kind of like their yearbook in a way, right? The graduating class, and it's pretty interesting what's written down here. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Abilene, Kansas. Okay, he wasn't born there. He's born in Texas, but he grew up in Abilene, and he's a senatorial appointee. Of course, and he was a corporal, a sergeant, a color sergeant, ABBA, whatever that is, sharpshooter, football squad, A in football. He got an A in that one. That was pretty good. He was baseball squad, and he was a cheerleader in an indoor meet, maybe track or whatever. But this is kind of interesting. They had one of his friends, I guess, write a little excerpt in here for him. Bushi, would you like to read a little bit of that? Go ahead, man.
My face is full of pie.
Thundera, would you like to read a little bit of that?
I can't. Your thing's flashing too much.
No, look on the YouTube side.
Oh, hang on. I can't read it. It's too blurry.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Senior Dwight David Eisenhower, gentlemen, the terrible Swedish Jew. As big as life and twice as natural, he claims to have the best authority for the statement that he is the handsomest man in the Corps and is ready to back up his claim at any time. At any rate, you'll have to give it to him that he's well developed abdominally and more graceful in pushing it around than Charles Calvert Benedict.
You might have lost Chester.
No, I'm here. You can't
Oh.
hear me? Can't you hear me? Can you hear me?
Something.
There you go.
All right. Was something happen there?
Yeah.
What did you last hear?
Something about his
Talking
abs.
about his abs.
Okay, well, this just goes
Eisenhower's
on. This
six-pack.
is kind of like a, it's a college thing, but it's very high schooly. His friends kind of joking and poking at him and stuff like that. Now, from this thing, those who want to go in that deep dreidel angle, the whole terrible Swedish Jew thing. Now, he supposedly his father was a Jewish man. But I don't know that that matters at all from my point of view, other than maybe him having more sympathy for the Jewish plight. But I also did some research into this because I understand this is one of the people that are the Holocaust deniers types. One of the things they pulled off of Eisenhower here. I do believe that what I had found that it was a girl. That they maybe one of the girls around West Point, she saw him coming out of a synagogue and she made an offhand joke that he was the terrible Swedish Jew. So I don't know that, and I don't even know that it matters, but understand that that is where that comes from. If you've read that about Eisenhower, it comes out of this yearbook excerpt. But nevertheless, it looks like he went through quite well. He did a lot of things, but the joking in this little, write up from his so-called friend is he was kind of mediocre, right? And you're going to hear this word a lot, mediocre. Matter of fact, a pretty famous fella, MacArthur. You guys have heard of him, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, MacArthur, an
I'm a
absolute,
big fan.
absolute legend, God level general, right? This guy, the power of this guy, the ability of this one guy to control an entire Pacific operation and theater, insane, right? This guy got saddled during the 20s with this fella here, and up into the 30s as well. Sorry, in the 30s. Sorry, he got saddled with Eisenhower, who was sent to be his attaché and his lieutenant colonel. And MacArthur actually wrote, and once again, all these things I'm saying today, they are documented. I'm staying away from speculation today, by the way, right? Until later. But this documented. MacArthur sent a letter to Washington saying, please get this guy out of my hair. He's incompetent and useless. Why did you put him over here with me? This is MacArthur speaking, right? That was his opinion of Eisenhower. And of course, Washington was like, nope, you're stuck with him, right? So Eisenhower, during his young military years, we're going to get into the soldier here in a minute. We're still not there. He was under MacArthur in the Philippines, and they were doing the things that they were doing over there. But while that was going on, there were other things happening in Europe that a lot of people seem to have completely forgotten, and I find it very interesting. You guys ever hear about this? This Spanish Civil War thing, 1936, 1939. Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
important, a little bit important. Matter of fact, this is kind of where the Soviets, the communist arm had reached. Now, understand, all across what you would call the Baltics, the Russian machine was just tearing people's lives apart. Ukraine was, oh my God, it's disgusting. Ooh, that'll make you mad if you go read that. But what the Soviets are doing, and I'm not going to get into a deep communist thing with Lenin and Stalin and all that absolute poison. I'm not going to get into it, but it's part of the conversation. You can't escape it, right? And this was going on, and people talk about in the 30s. These days, when you read history, it's all about what was Air Adolf doing, right? Well, I'll tell you what Air Adolf was. You had a communist revolution in Spain that was murdering everybody, including priests. And this is an interesting thing we see consistently with Marxists. They love to kill the Christians. You guys ever notice that? Right? Even
Sure.
even today, you can't talk about the Jews, you can't talk about the Muslims, you can't talk about any of those things, but you can hate and bash on a Christian all day long, baby. Well, why is that? Why do you
You
think
can be
that
one
is?
of the biggest and most successful YouTubers on the planet and say on your podcast that the Catholic Church only does one thing, and that's rape children, and not get any sort of backlash from it publicly.
Not at all.
None.
Right? And of course, when this absolutely horrible tragedy that was the Spanish Civil War, and Franco was desperate for help, desperate because they were just murdering. You literally had priests picking up guns and fighting in the street against these communists. Understand, that's what was happening here. It is the disgusting moment in history. And what did the British do? Oh, we're going to stay out of it. What did the Americans do? Oh, wait, we best be neutral, right? And who
You
came to
know,
their aid? Go ahead.
you know what though, Chester? I think part of the issue that always comes up with this discussion, and I think much of it is intentional, and it's the topic of when the Jews come up, and I
Yep.
see that as being incredibly unfair.
Yep.
And even today, when I hear people, because people always mention the Jews, and they're not entirely wrong, but it shouldn't be the Jews. People need to start calling this what it is. It's Bolshevism,
It's bullshit. It's
and
communism. It's
and
bullshit.
I think it's very much designed from the inside to point it at the Jews. And then there's a counter already set up that if you mention the Jews, you're anti-Semite, and you should disregard the entire argument.
Right.
So I think it's foolish to say it's the Jews. And even in the conspiracy world, you see it all the time. It's the Jews. It's the Jews. Now, it's not the Jews. It's like any country where you say, "Oh, the Americans are a bunch of warmongering assholes." Well, the American citizens really aren't. The American government, it absolutely is. The political class. It's like that in every country. So, um, I think it's really important in these topics that we don't fall in the trap of starting to say the Jews, although it comes up in every
Yeah.
single major world topic. Now, why is that?
No, that's a conversation for
I
another
would say
day.
it's
Yeah.
I would say it's by design, and it's meant to try to disarm and to end an argument.
Well, thank you very much for doing Booster's job of talking me down. Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. But of course, to tie in with what Model just said, keep in mind that when the Bolshevik Revolution, and you want to get into a conspiracy theory, we could do that. I don't think we should, but we could.
The Bolshevik Revolution would be a great show topic, although
would.
it's another one that is, it's so dicey
It
because
is.
it's been designed to be that way. It's been made into something that you're not allowed to talk about.
Can I just say it though? Can I just say it, please? Can I?
I think you should.
You
I think you should.
The
All right, what are we
the
saying?
Bolshevik Revolution was led and organized by people of the Jewish faith. No.
Or
Oh my
people
God. He said
or
it.
people hiding behind.
Hiding behind it, right?
I think that's a common theme in this. I think it's a lot of these people that do this stuff hide behind that,
Yeah.
and they put a target on the Jewish people's backs.
Yeah, no, and it's true because there's a very big difference between a Zionist and a Jewish person, or a person of the Jewish faith, for that matter. But
Sure,
understand,
and there's
Lenin
not
was
much
put on a
difference.
train. Lenin was put on a train by by a Jewish council with 10 million in gold, heading into Russia, and there was already a team ahead of him that was starting to soften him up. Yep. Yeah. Anyway,
If I
let's
wanted
not.
to,
Let's, no,
if
we're
I
not
wanted
going
to
there.
get up to,
You get me in trouble.
if I really wanted to get up into
No.
no good and really cause some problems, I would
Oh,
say I
no.
was Jewish.
I think he
You
was
know,
Jewish. And
if I
Stalin
was
was.
really pulling some nonsense, I would say I was Jewish first, and then later on, when someone was criticizing me, I'd be like, "Oh, you just don't like me because I'm Jewish."
Yeah,
I
exactly.
really think there's
Yeah.
a lot of that goes
Very
on.
convenient scapegoat. Huh?
Yeah, very convenient. And do keep in mind that Stalin's father was Dujol. And if you do any kind of etymology and search and where Stalin's family come from, you'll know he's Jewish too. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But anyway, we're not talking about them.
Oh.
That's not why we're here. We're talking about the Spanish Civil War. But we
Oy
had a lot of
vey.
oy vey. Thank you very much. That's our safe word. But there was a lot. And keep in mind that this was going on from the early turning of the 20th century, right? And another thing, you can go to Europe right now and you can see street signs all over the place. And if you study why these streets are named after certain people, you'll see a lot of them in modern 21st century Europe. They're named after Bolshevik revolutionaries who came into other countries trying to create and spread war. But their names are
Yep.
sitting on streets. Now, how does that happen? How is that happen? But yet there it
Happy
is.
little accident.
Little accidents all over the place. Anyway,
Mhm.
once again, that's dangerous territory. But my point is, who came to the aid of Franco and the Spanish people against this communist insurgents in his country? And keep in mind, no
Me.
matter what nonsense they tell you about Franco, he's the one that allowed the votes to happen. Keep that in mind, right? Go ahead, Booster.
What?
You
I'm
see,
not gonna lie. I haven't been listening.
I know it's okay. But anyway, who came to his aid?
And
Well, the
and
Italians
updates.
did.
I only have 3 shirts. Turns out.
It's true, but we
Yeah.
also had the Germans come to his aid. We had some aid from the Portuguese. There was even a regiment from Ireland, even though they weren't supposed to come over. We had Croatia, Romania, a whole bunch of little countries join in to help Franco. And and of course, what were they doing? They were rallying to whose cry? The Vatican's cry. They were there to support and protect the Catholic people. Now you're saying, well, what does that have to do with anything? Everything. It has to do with everything. Because who was aiding the communists other than Russia? Well, there's a whole bunch of them. And another big one you might not know anything about was Mexico was there. Mexico, you say? Yes, Mexico. Oh, no, Chester. Mexico is a staunch Roman Catholic country. Are they? Really? Because they had a civil war too. You might not know about the same time the Bolsheviks are going off. It's kind of odd how it all happened at the same time, model. It was almost as if it was orchestrated. I don't know. But anyway,
But
they had.
that was old times, Chester. That
Oh,
stuff didn't
yes.
happen back then.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But of course, there was a civil war in Mexico, and not only did the communists win, they came in power and they changed their constitution to make worship and gathering of Christian religion, the Catholic Mass, illegal. Now, to be fair, they didn't enforce it very much until they had a new leader come in, which is about the same time as this was going on, or at least a little. It was a little bit before all this stuff happened, but it came up into this. And do understand that when that new leader came in, he made it completely illegal to even worship, right? And he went around shooting anybody who dared to stand in front of a damn church. That's how vicious it got. So much so that the Knights of Columbus, you ever heard about them? You know those guys who you see just sitting on the Mardi Gras floats, and you're like, oh, it's just some Mason group. No, they're not.
Just chilling.
Yeah. No, they're not. Those guys deserve a big clap and kudo for what they did, because they actually went down in there, and many of them died trying to protect religious people in Mexico who were being murdered by these socialists, right? And they went and begging with the American people to help. And at that time, this is the 20s, there was a certain organization that had incredible power. They were called the KKK, and they were really pushing hard against these Knights of Columbus and their horrible rhetoric. And you say, oh, no, Chester, the KKK are religious fanatics. Are they? Really? They're created by the Democratic Party, socialists, right? Now, in the end, they did get a little bit of support, and of course, the people who were fighting that Revolutionary War, they were called the Cristaros, and they had a little war cry. They would say "Cristaros Rey," meaning Christ the King, right? But the president at the time did go and talk to the Mexican leader, and they were like, all right, we'll back up on the Christian thing. Didn't get them out, didn't send soldiers. The communists were still in charge, but they did let the people start worshiping. And then what did the government do as soon as they had that conversation with America? They started murdering every damn Cristaros they could find. Thousands of them just murdered, right? And this went on and on and on and on, all the way up until the Spanish Civil War, where Mexico was fighting right alongside Russia and the other Bolsheviks trying to take over Spain. Yeah. It's pretty disgusting, isn't it? And all this was happening
That's wild, bro.
well, it is wild. While little old Eisenhower was sitting over in the Philippines, and of course, toward the end of it, he was pulled back into Washington. It's important that we understand the setting of the thing, right? Because this is something no one talks about. And if they do, they say Franco was a fascist. And that's the end of the conversation. Right? I mean, any comments?
No,
No,
you're right.
not on that. Not on that. I mean, you're covering it.
This is why these neo-Marxists, as some people call them nowadays, they're just Bolsheviks.
Yeah, absolutely, and they need to be called that. And
Officially trying to let me finish. Officially have made it law now that Franco's tomb can be exhumed and destroyed, even though he saved Spain from the communist hell that was the 30s and up to the 60s and beyond.
Oh yeah.
Whether he was a good guy or a bad guy or an evil fascist, they are much worse. It's like trying to pick between, a dogfight and a frickin' tank to jump in front of. Well, I'm going to stop the dogfight. Let's let the tank roll on by. Because the tank's going to crush you and everything you've ever believed. The dogfight might nip you a couple times. You can survive the dogfight. A tank rolls you over. That's ball game. And that's what communism, Bolshevistic communism especially, is. And it's what it did to the Russian people. It's what it helped do to the Chinese people and is still doing to them today. And it's what's infiltrating our society. It has been for a very long time and causing pretty much all these problems that we have today. Different versions of it, different breeds of it, but it's all the same source. And I'm going to rebuff a little bit towards what Model was saying about communism, about Marxism. Marxism is absolutely secular Abrahamism. It is straight, derived from the Talmud. That is where he got the ideas from. He just translated them into economic ideas. That does not mean that all Jewish people are communists or bad people. They're not. Most of them are great people. But he did derive his ideas from Judaism.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
And the Jewish people do have a history of supporting socialist and communist kind of ideology, but the left has the Bolsheviks and the communists. The right has the Zionists, and don't fool yourself; they're not that much different. They took the same playbook, they ripped it in half, and then one side got half the book, the other side's pursuing the other half of the book. So they're always working towards that same end goal. They're not in opposition.
Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah.
Now,
the two-party system in the United States is an illusion.
Yeah, no, that is true. But underneath this understanding that we've laid out here, and understanding that one of the things that Germany and many other countries, including Italy, they were really fighting the Christian fight. When the Vatican called, they jumped in there immediately. Matter of fact, what Franco asked from Herr Hitler was very minimal. Hitler was like, "No, dude, I'm going to help you out." He brought from his from North Africa, he brought in a freaking buttload of army, and that's the only reason it went the other way, because Italy, Mussolini couldn't be upstarted by this young German leader, so he sent in a whole bunch of troops too, and that's the only reason they survived, right? It's a really interesting thing that fighting for religious rights and freedom of speech and those kind of things, it was the Germans and the Italians that were in there fighting for it. And where were the British? Where were the Americans? Where were the French? Nowhere to be seen. Nowhere.
Where they were is they were helping the communists in
They
Russia
were, especially
stabilize
Americans.
Russia. Yeah, it's disgusting and despicable how much Russia was created as an enemy for the world
Yeah.
by the forces that would then later destroy it, quote unquote.
And keep
Well,
in
sure,
mind there
because
were
it was also a way to expend a lot of money into these military and intelligence programs because of this enemy that didn't exist, and everybody benefited. Not us, not you and I.
no. But here's the thing, though: a whole bunch of people, as you guys said, were pumping money into this Bolshevik thing. But you had people like Preston Bush and other ones who are still chastised to this day for funding Germany. But in America, you had both sides of this thing were being funded by different groups, and it's kind of I always say, look at the ones that get blamed, to get the finger pointed and get called out, because it just might be that they're the ones that might have been on the right side. Dare
Well,
I
in
say?
some cases, Chester, you had Rothschild and Rockefeller interests that were funding both sides.
Oh yeah.
They were
No, they
funding the
were.
Americans and the Germans,
And
and they
who?
were just cashing in.
Oh yeah, yeah. And who are they funding it through? Oh. Yeah, that guy, right? Now I keep bringing this guy up, and you'll see. I'm going to get to him. Yeah. But
DMB Chester. Someone in the
Yes,
chat
son of a
earlier.
bitch.
Someone in the chat earlier noticed that he shares very similar initials to someone else. Brian Michael Bendis.
dun dun dun.
Oh
It all
my
comes
Coincidence?
God.
No,
Yes.
it's not.
With the comic books.
Right. But anyway, so we have the young lad here, Eisenhower. He's been working his way up through the ranks, and he gets called back to Washington. And now we're going to translate into Eisenhower the soldier. Okay, so here we go. Now, this guy who MacArthur couldn't stand, by the way, and when Eisenhower became the supreme leader, which is what he was, he gave MacArthur all kinds of consternations. I wonder why. But this guy was promoted over 30 seasoned generals, people who've actually been in war, which he had never been, by the way. In World War I, he sat in America, and they gave him a bunch of awards, by the way, for teaching people how to use a tank. Never set foot in the European theater. Never did, right?
He looks like he's right out of the Three Stooges. I love it.
I'm just telling you. This guy was promoted over 30 people in the field with experience, well respected, promoted, and what happened? He was put in charge of the North African campaign. The hero of the North African campaign, if you listen to certain peoples. And I also want you to take another notation as I go through some of these pictures. Take a look at him here. Now you'll see a lot of these pictures of Eisenhower in the war. Look at these war dogs behind him. These guys have seen some action, huh? Look at them. This guy is always pristine. He's clean, beautiful. There's no mark on him. It's almost as he just walked out of a different world and came into here. And all these pictures show him like that. And if you look at some of these other leaders, even frickin' Montgomery, the prissy bastard that was Montgomery, these guys, when you see pictures of them in World War II, of course they're clean. They're generals. They're not in the front line, but they're road weary, dude. You can see it. They're in tanks, in tents. They're moving through the campaign field. They're involved. This guy, it's like he just stepped out of an airplane from across the pond. It's just an observation I made when you're going through looking at Eisenhower, all his war pictures, they all look like this. Look how clean he is compared to what's behind him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and like even the other generals like Omar Bradley, they really shut their mouth when it came to that guy.
Oh yeah.
And because these were hands-on generals.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of these men kind of met some suspicious ends too.
Now, a lot of them did. I'm going to get to one in a moment. But this fellow here was supposed to be this incredible, charismatic person that pulled everyone together, all these generals, all these leaders, this amazing, amazing guy who the World War II was won by this guy. This is the guy who did it, him, right? But yet, where are all the accolades from generals and soldiers? Where are all these comments about the great Eisenhower? Where are they? And especially when you talk about the hero of North Africa, really? Really? You know who that is?
It's
Rommel?
Patton.
That's
Oh, Pat.
That's George S. Patton, baby, the actual hero of North Africa. And don't listen to any of that
course.
British nonsense about frickin' Montgomery. Don't listen to it. Guy was useless. All right.
Monty was a poof.
He was a poof, dude. He was a prissy little bastard, and he was always getting in the way and causing trouble. This dude is the one who won North Africa, not Eisenhower. Matter of fact, when you go read the histories, other than him being put in charge, he's not even mentioned. It's all about this ferocious bastard right here and what he did. Right? The Germans were terrified of this guy, terrified. Right?
He was a little crazy. But
Our
crazy.
generals were terrified of him.
Yeah, no, they
Yes.
were. But I mean, it gets worse, right? Because he was also the genius of D-Day. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Operation Overlord. It's all this guy. Of course, it was it was in years in the building, and he had nothing at all to do. He was still in the Philippines under MacArthur, but yet he's the genius of D-Day. He was, and of course he became the supreme European leader, the leader. Well, let me give you something a little bit about accolades when it comes to actual war. Let's take a look at this. North Africa, Sicily, the Phantom Army, Normandy breakout, Lorraine campaign, the frickin' Battle of the Bulge, advance to Berlin. Look at this bastard. He will cut your balls off and make you eat them. That's a general. That is
My
a general.
grandfather was a staff sergeant on Normandy on the landing,
Yeah.
and he was under Patton, and he always talked so highly. He said Patton was an animal. He would have just ripped any man's throat out.
Yeah, no, and the whole time, this political bastard that is Eisenhower, and if you guys haven't kind of seen which way I'm leaning yet, he was constantly sitting behind his desk, giving Patton and MacArthur trouble all the time, always, right? That's what he did. This dude right here was the hero, not only in North Africa, he was the hero of Europe as far as an American point of view goes. And to be fair, with Montgomery being so inept, the British soldiers were more enamored with him than their own damn general, right? Now, I'm not going to take away the Russian effort in it, although that's a whole other conversation we'll have for another day. But I'm not going to take away from that. The good and mostly bad of it. But this guy, this was the hero of World War II when it came to the European theater. And of course, the Pacific theater was MacArthur. These are real generals doing real stuff that commanded ridiculous level of loyalty from their men. They were in the field banging heads. Now look at this guy. He is a general, and he looks nice and proper here. I mean, he's doing some kind of press thing, right? Let's go back to the earlier picture where these are pictures from him in the field. Does this compare at all to that? Look how clean that is. Look at this guy. He's in the field. You can see it. And there's lots of other pictures too. This guy was there. He was banging heads. And like I said, yeah. I mean, come on. Anyway.
Yeah. Patton was there's a reason that he had a car accident.
Yeah.
Right as the war was over, because he was a threat politically to everybody in power. He was so beloved by his men. He probably could have done a military coup if he wanted to, and
He would have been president.
Yeah,
Easily.
definitely.
That's why.
Yeah.
If he wanted to be after the war, if he had wanted to be president, Eisenhower would have got stomped. It would have been embarrassed. It would have humiliated Eisenhower.
Yeah, no, it would have. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
If Patton had his way, we would have gotten back on the tanks and rode through Russia.
Oh, he really, really wanted to, and he was pulled back. And of course, he was pulled back for a reason. Well, once again, that's a conversation. That's a Bolshevik conversation. We're not going to go that.
He had a massive amount of respect for the Germans. He didn't want to destroy Germany.
No,
He
Eisenhower
always said
did.
we were fighting the wrong war.
No, he always
were the
said we were
wrong
fighting the
enemy.
wrong enemy.
Yep.
Right. And of course, he understood the Bolshevik threat. And Germany and the way they were mistreated, especially after the war, understand that if you go watch as an American or even a European, you go watch some of the witness statements about these death camps that Eisenhower put up. All the witnesses, they did a lot of interviews. There's tons of documentation. There's tons of books. There's accusations in The Hague. All this is documented. I'm not making any of this up. right? And if you go watch some of those interviews, which I have, you are looking at these German soldiers and we were treated so badly. We figured we'd surrender to the Americans, we'd have a better chance than with the Russians. But then the absolute hell they went through, and you're like, well, you're a German, you're a Nazi, you deserve it. Well, were they? Were they really? Because if you actually go back and do a little bit of study, those SS were a very small group. Most of the Germans were just citizens who were soldiers in the middle of a conflict, just like all other citizens everywhere else get caught up in it, right? And the American soldiers who were under Eisenhower in those death camps, not only did they intentionally starve them, they beat them. They had situations where they marched them between one camp and another, and if they fell along the way, a soldier would come up and crush their skull because there was another truck coming up behind that would take their dead body and throw it in. That's what happened.
And
This
they
is real.
destroyed their supply lines, so there was no food, no medical. I mean, they manufactured that
did.
problem.
And you'd say, well, that would be a good way to end a war. Okay, but I'm talking about after the war.
Yep.
Right. But anyway, let's take a look at these little bit of excerpts, if you don't mind. I'm just going to read this if it's okay. 1 month before the end of the war, World War II, General Eisenhower issued special orders concerning the treatment of German prisoners, and specific in the language of those orders was this statement: "Prison enclosures are to provide no shelter or other comforts." Eisenhower's biographer, Stephen Ambrose, who was given access to the Eisenhower personal letters, states that he proposed to exterminate the entire German general staff, good enough, thousands of people after the war. Eisenhower, in his personal letters, did not merely hate the Nazi regime and the few who imposed its will down from the top, but that he hated the German people as a race, on a reoccurring theme here. It was his personal intent to destroy as many of them as he could, and one of the ways was to wipe out as many prisoners of war as possible. Of course, that was illegal under the international law, the Geneva Convention. And he issued the order on March 10th, 1945, after the war, and verified by his initials on a cable of that date that German prisoners of war be redesignated as disarmed enemy forces. Called in these reports as DEF, he ordered that these Germans did not fall under the Geneva rule and were not to be fed or given any water or medical attention. The Swiss Red Cross was not to inspect their camps, for under the DEF clarification, they had no such authority or jurisdiction. Now understand, that is from his actual frickin' biographer.
Yeah, and Stephen Ambrose is a brilliant historical author, but he also very much follows the line. Another author that wrote on Eisenhower, who I would really suggest, if you're interested actually in learning, is David Irving, who was just destroyed. His credibility was destroyed because he was writing against the common narratives. But a fantastic author, a fantastic speaker. He did prison time for going against the narrative in Europe. Mm-hmm. And definitely David Irving is someone to look up.
Hey,
if you look up David Irving, you're going to see Holocaust denier David Irving. But David Irving is a historian and a brilliant author.
Yeah.
Very educated man.
Hey, model, was David Irvin responsible for your mic sounding like crap?
Yeah.
Possibly. I'm having an issue here. One of the kids broke into the office.
Damn kid.
Little shit.
Yeah.
So we're having an issue.
Well, anyway, that is the end of my Einstein the Soldier segment.
Einstein?
Well, the problem is Einstein comes into this conversation, and I'm trying my best not to bring him in.
Einstein the Soldier coming to an Indiegogo near you.
Eisenhower the Soldier. I do apologize. That brings to the end of the my Eisenhower Soldier part. Would you guys like to add anything until before I move on to Eisenhower the President?
No, he was a political animal from the beginning.
Yeah. Yep. No, he definitely groomed. No question.
No,
he was designated to fill that role.
And that's kind of my point. He was chosen. It seems
now,
very
what
obvious.
are the chances that the war was manufactured to allow him to assume that role?
Well,
it's very possible.
That's a deep conspiracy theory right there, brother. But when we get into his presidential thing, and you see the list of his accomplishments, maybe you're right. That's a fair point. But the thing is, if you look at his meteoric rise, especially that he did not have the love and certification of General MacArthur behind him, the fact that he rose so quickly out of nowhere, how? He had no experience in the field. He was an attaché at best, but all of a sudden he's put in charge of the entire American and Allied effort, not only in North Africa, but in Europe. What? How? How did that happen? It's out of nowhere, guys. It's out of nowhere. And especially we know that most of the stuff that he actually contributed, even though they give him plenty of accolades, the reality of the matter, it seems to me, mostly what he did as a soldier was get in the way of the actual generals.
The sad thing is we probably, and I say we, the Allies, probably would have at least had to fight that to a stalemate without guys like Patton and MacArthur. Eisenhower he was a great figurehead, but I think that's about it. I don't think there's much evidence that he was a master strategist or anything like
No.
that.
I don't see any evidence at all. Actually, and the fact that model keeps using the word groomed, I keep using the word chosen. I think it's absolutely a case for this. It's very
And
similar.
I use the word fiddled.
It's it's spookily, eerily reminiscent of a certain Barack Obama.
Absolutely, and that is something that definitely comes up. Imagine the planning, the advanced planning that goes into something like that.
Yeah, no, it's pretty ridiculous. And of course, that brings me back to this fella. Here is just some pictures of some of Barack's men. I know I keep coming back to it, but I think it's the center of everything, guys. Because who were his really good friends? Oh, who's that? That's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Oh, who's that? Winston Churchill called him his greatest friend in his life. Eisenhower, right next to it, said, "I learned at the knee of this great man." Of course, we have down here a picture of General Pershing, another great general people don't talk much about. But him and Marshall and Cox and many others, all of them were under the direct control of Baruch, right? And I know it's this very reminiscent name, isn't it? It's almost eerily, comedic. Anyway, but
Well,
this,
there's also another very similar person involved in setting up a country over in the Middle East with a very similar last name.
oh yeah, no, that's true. But here's the thing with this guy. Why did this guy have so much influence? Well, he was a major banker. Like I said, he was backed by the Rothschilds. That little red shield joke I made earlier. And this guy affected so many things. I know Thundero hates, when we say Bendis and Booster does his thing.
Uh,
You're supposed to say
Huh?
Bendis.
He's rubbish.
Yeah, okay. Thundero says the same. Thundero does the same thing when we talk about Woodrow Wilson,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I spit piss on his name every chance I get.
Well, this is the guy who backed him. This is the guy that got him to create the IRS. This is the guy that got him to create Social Security and all those other, the beginning of it anyway. All that was from this guy, right?
That son of a bitch.
That son of a bitch. And why was FDR and particularly Churchill, why were they so indebted to this guy? Well, it comes out of the Depression because this fellow right here, Barack, at the perfect timing. I mean, perfect timing just before the 29th of 1929, when the Black Tuesday and the market crashed and, of course, created the Great Depression. This guy pulled all his money out. It's just really amazing. But he also told some of his buddies. One of those buddies, Winston Churchill, right? Who was considered a dirty, drunken gambler at the time. Boy, Barack turned him into something special, didn't he? Yeah?
Yeah, he was a drunken loser.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he was on a path to nowhere, and then all of a sudden.
All of a sudden. And of course, all of the competitors to Eisenhower were brushed aside, including Patton, who died mysteriously. And of course, what that gave us was number 34. President Dwight David Eisenhower. What a wonderful guy. So let's take a look at some of his accomplishments, the things he did while he was president. It's pretty interesting here. And keep in mind, you guys pop in anytime you want, of course. But let's take a look here. Eisenhower Doctrine stated the United States would not hesitate to aid any country in the Middle East that asked for help resisting communist aggression. Okay, well, that's pretty interesting. It's a little bit of a switch of ideas because he was certainly not eager about fighting communism at all. But what it does show is this continued war footing. Because you remember the conceit of our show, which started almost 2 hours ago, was this right here: his warning of the military-industrial complex, which is it's a dove statement. It's not a hawk statement, right? But yet here he is, more of his warmongering, right? And of course, we know the absolute debacle at the Middle East came out, and you can see how far back they were planning this stuff, right? Here's another thing. Dwight Eisenhower, 1953 1961. After the Geneva Accords were signed between the French and the Communist Viet Minh, leading to a partition of Vietnam. Oh, what? That's kind of early. Yeah, right, it is. Eisenhower decided to create the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, SEATO, with the purpose of stopping communist influences in Southeast Asia. SEATO was used as a cover for Eisenhower to build a new nation in the South, fighting against the communists in the North. In 1955, the Republic of Vietnam was born with Ung as its president. Okay, that wasn't racist at all. So
It's not your fault. Vietnamese is a ridiculous language.
it is. It is.
What is Nego Din Dime? How do you
That was
say?
better. I think you were close. I think you were close.
Nai Din Dime.
Something like that. But here's the thing: more warmongering, right? I mean, did you guys know that
Terrible man.
ultimately it was Eisenhower that started the American involvement in the Vietnam War? I mean, most people that attest that to other people's, right? But yet it didn't start with them. It started right here with this guy, right? Interesting, right? And of course, look at all these other countries that were involved in the things. It wasn't just Vietnam. Of course, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, India, Bangladesh, all these were coming under heavy communist influence, all of them. And this doesn't even get into the African problem or the South American problem, which we know quite a bit about as North Americans, right? More warmongering. Kind of interesting. Another thing here, of course, the Little Rock incident and the desegregation. Now, he did send down troops, or did he? Somebody sent troops down. But the thing is, it's well known that Eisenhower did not like desegregation at all, even though he's touted as this amazing creator, initiator of the civil rights movement, which, of course, Kennedy finished. But that's not the truth at all. He thought desegregation was a horrible idea. The South was certainly not ready for it, and he didn't want none of them peoples around his daughter, quote unquote. Right? Eisenhower. So it's really interesting to me, kind of like with Lincoln, and Lincoln even deserves it more, but that he gets accredited with his civil rights, amazing action and support, when in truth, he wasn't for it at all. But he gets the claim. Whereas Lincoln, he certainly saw the black as a lesser human, but he still didn't think that he still felt bad for them. Now, there was a lot of politics in why he wanted to free the slaves. Of course, I understand that argument. But to be fair, Lincoln did feel bad for the slaves. He did. But he didn't see them as equals. Understand that. Eisenhower wasn't even for desegregation at all. But yet he is put on his record as being this great emancipator. Really?
Well, and the worst part about it is he trampled the Constitution to do that. He had no authority to enforce the law, legally anyway, to enforce any law with the military or any branch of the military on United States soil, yet he did it. And no one stopped. There was nothing. Yeah. No one really tried to stop him because he was too popular.
Yeah, that's fair point, dude. Fair point. But once again, even though this was a social issue, as Thunder just said, he sent military in. Someone did. Once again, very much a hawkish type of move, right? All right. And
Wrong.
right. Shut up. You're
Oh.
supposed to say oy vey.
I
All
thought
right.
I thought like when you go right, you're supposed to go wrong. But
Oh, that's fair.
my bad.
That's
Yeah.
debate. You're right. Here's a quote from
Yeah.
Roy Wilkins. President Eisenhower was a fine general and a good, decent man. But if he had fought World War II the way he fought for civil rights, we would all be speaking German right now. Woof. Woof.
Ouch. Cuss.
That's a good one.
That is a good one, dude.
What's kind of funny is at that time, German was probably the second most common language in the country.
No,
so
it's
a lot
true.
of Americans were speaking German at that time.
It's true. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those. That's one of those things you hear all the time. Every time I hear it, my eyes roll into the back of my head. When if it wasn't for the greatest generation, you'd all be speaking German right now. I hear that, and I'm just like, boy, man, the indoctrination is so heavy.
Yeah, and this whole presentation has undertones of Bolshevikism, and I understand that, but it's also about take the friggin' blinders off, right? These and most people just take for verbatim Eisenhower, one of our greatest presidents.
Yep.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all, man. And then, of course, we come into here, more hawkish behavior. He threatens of nuclear attacks to bring China and Russia. Oh, I'm sorry, Korea to the table. Right? China.
Yes.
Well, no, I mean he threatened nuclear attack. Understand? He didn't just say we have nukes. He said, well, "I'll bomb you.
We will use them.
We will use them." Right? I mean, that's pretty hawkish. What president have you heard since then actually threaten nuclear attack?
Well, Trump kind of little.
Well, I think he's
A
talking
little.
about
How do you put
nuking
it
you
to
with
a
his
little?
Twitter. It's a little different.
He insinuated nuclear attack. Let's say that. He never said he was going to use a nuke. He just said our bombs are bigger.
Look,
Okay,
I
well,
have
okay.
this good friend of mine, and he kind of goes boom. You don't
They-
want to mess with him.
It's true. Well, he could have been talking about the MOBA, to be fair. But I get you. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But I'm just trying to make the point that this guy was hawkish his entire life, supposedly, right? And we're going back to the conceit of today's conversation, the industrial military complex, right? So what else did he do? Wow, he founded NASA. Did you know that?
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of his great successes that he supposedly had, he took straight from the Nazis. Huh.
Yeah, I know, right?
I don't know if he didn't found it, but he definitely pushed for it and advocated it.
He is considered the founder, the reason it exists. Yeah. Now, of course,
there's
I
another
know
gentleman
other
you
people.
might add into there.
That's my point, dude. Thank you, Go ahead, model. Extrapolate. I mean, that's my point, though. My whole point of today. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it was a Jewish fellow that is actually credited as the founder of NASA. I would have to look up his exact name.
Well, there's a whole bunch of them.
My point he was making is let's hit the two major accomplishments that most people know of Eisenhower's besides the desegregation thing, which I'm for desegregation. I'm not saying that was a bad policy to have. I just think he shouldn't get credit for using the military to enforce it. That's illegal.
No, it's illegal.
Violation of the Constitution. It should not be praised. However, he does also get credit for the highway system. Our multi-state highway, interstate highway.
I have it prepared. There it is.
Yeah. Well, the highway system, he quite literally took from the Nazis.
Yep.
The idea of it, the implementation of it, the design of it in a lot of places, especially mountainous areas, because that's how they had theirs over there. And NASA was basically founded by defecting Nazi scientists.
Sure.
I mean,
Project Paperclip. Yeah, which we have a show on. And the thing with it is, there, and I'm going to stay away from the oy vey warning. And if you look at this map and you do your research into the National System of Interstates and Defense Highways, interesting actual title of it, it's highly political.
Yeah.
highly political. It's kind of a mess, actually. A lot of these roads should not have been built where they were if you were really trying to be efficient. But of course, politics comes into everything. And of course, the last little accomplishment of this guy was, Hawaii and Alaska became the 49th and 50th state under him.
Yeah, and for some reason we haven't added any more since then. That's
No.
very.
No. Mm.
I want to be a state.
Now,
Can
You
I be
should-
American?
New Zealand should be a state, but that's another topic for another day.
it is, yeah, as well as Canada. But here's some other little things to just tack on to, just little bits of, non-essential information. He signed legislation that expanded Social Security. He increased the minimum wage, and created the departments of health, education, and welfare. Now,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, he really put that all into play. He put the groundwork into play for what we're seeing play out now.
yeah. Well, the
Those
thing is,
values of we'll give you free stuff.
yeah, and well, he wasn't a Republican. And my conceit the whole show is this is not Eisenhower at all. None of it. This is all coming back to this fella right here. This guy. Baruch.
Yeah.
And
Business.
this guy
Yes.
and his people and his money and the control he had, understand, he had influence over FDR, he had influence over Churchill, he had influence over Truman and Eisenhower, tons of generals, and a lot of other people. His banking concerns were ridiculously powerful, and he threw his weight around like crazy. He's one of the very few people to come out of the Great Depression smelling like a rose, and boy was he. Right? This guy and his agenda and those behind him, all of this we talked about today, everything I think is their voice. I think that the concept that Eisenhower was groomed and chosen because he was a pretty boy to put up in front of people as the face of it. And I believe, this is my theorizing here, I have no evidence for this other than a gut feeling. In that horrible speech that he gave as his last moment as President of the United States, as with many of his other speeches, keep in mind, this guy was not a great speaker. He really wasn't. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you right here in a second. But I think he was a front man for the entire thing, and I feel that last little 15 minutes of speech was him. I think that was the real him. I think he was warning about all the things he had seen during his life and all the stuff that he had been pushed around and forced to do. I think we saw the actual soft dove Eisenhower, the real face of him, for 15 minutes. And the rest of it, the hawk, was not him. It was this cabal that has been pushing since, it actually goes back to the middle of the 1700s. But as far as the 20th century is concerned, the main face of it, if you do any research, of course, is Baruch. But I think that's my theory, that this guy was nothing but a pansy.
Well, it's been a long time since the president in this country actually had power. He's a puppet.
Yes.
So when people get this divisive argument going between them about Obama this, Trump this, Bush this, it's designed to distract you so that you argue about stuff that has no bearing on anything that goes on.
Yeah. But what do you guys think about my theory?
If you think there's not a red, well, absolutely, it's that one final bit of humanity of him letting that go.
Yeah. What do you think?
So sure, these guys sit around for years doing this stuff, and after a while, it has to eat at them.
Yeah. What do you think about my theory, Thundera?
I think you're mostly correct. I also think that Eisenhower had been uncomfortable with his role in things for a very long time. I don't think he was ever comfortable with it, to be honest. But he had made his bed, and he had no choice but to lie in it. Plus, they made him incredibly wealthy and famous, and beloved even to this day.
Yeah.
So I think you're correct. I think he took his last parting shot because he knew he wouldn't get another chance, and he just went for it. And he just warned the entire world that was listening, because the entire world was listening, that the military-industrial complex of the United States of America was growing more and more powerful and more insidious by the day.
Mhm.
And he was worried it was going to get completely out of control, and he was right.
He was right. And look where we are now. Look at this deep state problem we have, and it's real. It's real.
Well, imagine he knows what was done to MacArthur and to Patton,
Yep,
and he has to sit on that all those years,
he does.
and
yeah.
then preach all this America good government bullshit.
Yeah. Now, I want to. I'm so happy with myself. It's 2 hours on the dot. Look at that. All right. Now,
You know what else Eisenhower did?
What?
He is responsible for getting "Under God" put in the Pledge of Allegiance.
He is. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of little things like that. But I mean, don't be distracted because all around under God, it's not talking about your God. It's really not talking about your God at all. But anyway, that's a whole nother show model. Don't distract me. All right. But now I'm just going to play this little thing, and then of course I'll let these guys, go and throw all their stuff they want at it here. But this, of course, is the anniversary of D-Day. And this is just one random speech. There's a ton of them. Matter of fact, there's some that are far worse than this one. But I want you to pay attention to how this guy speaks, how he intonates, right? And just take a look at it and understand that they're telling you that this fella was this incredible speaker, this communicator that could gather all the generals and all the leaders of Europe under one banner to move forward efficiently. That's what they're telling you about this guy. And if you go check any of his speeches, like I said, some of them worse. Even his last speech, the one we're talking about here, where he gave his last presidential speech, was incredibly awkward. He kept looking off screen. He looked incredibly paranoid. But anyway, this is kind of a middle one. But just take a look here and get a feel for Eisenhower. What is going on? Oh, there it is. Okay, here we go.
Ouch.
2 years ago, on D-Day, the American soldier again proved his outstanding worthiness as a fighting man. No obstacle could stop him. No enemy could withstand his courage, his endurance, his will to win. We have yet to complete the job he so well advanced at such great cost. Victory in war is barren until a secure peace has been established. Young men who have not yet done their share must now come forward to help carry the burden. May the memory of what the American fighting man has accomplished renew in us a high resolve to see the job through. We, who's much to help win the shooting war, cannot afford to be laggard now. That we owe to every man who fell on D-Day and on so many other fields throughout the world.
Now, that right there is take. That right there was take one. Okay, this is the press taking multiple takes, right? And he goes into another one, which is just as bad. But the thing is, did you guys notice this? He stutters. His intonation is. Sorry, say what? Say what, Thundero? Thundero?
You and your fucking socks. I swear to God, you have too many.
I think he's talking
He's
to
having a
his
private
wife.
conversation. But model, you see the point I'm making, right?
God, my fucking socks.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
God,
hey.
we've been derailed by socks.
No, I do see the point you're making. These are definitely takes. They're practice runs.
They are.
It's not. See, I don't think the delivery is that bad. That's not what I see the most. I see actually an actor is what I see.
Yeah, that's
An
kind
actor
of my
who's
point.
rehearsing.
Yeah. But if you go look at all his speeches, they're awkward and off like that, dude. He has
Well, he's a nerd. He's a dork. He's a nerd. Look at him.
true, but as a
I want to tell his lunch when he
linguist,
beat him up.
it's very unsmooth and unprofessional, especially for what he's supposed to be. This is the anniversary D-Day. This is not him coming out of West Point, dude. Right? This is the man who's going to be president. At this time, right now, what he's probably in charge of NATO, and he's putting together NATO and leading them to be this great future thing. Excuse me. Right? That's probably what's happening right here in this. This is a man that is one of the most powerful and well known in the world, and he can't even put frickin' sentences together without being awkward and very odd intonation. It's from a speech person. It's horrible, dude. It's really bad, and it's
And
confusing.
to just to kind of think too of at that time what he's been involved with, what is swimming around in that round shiny head.
Yeah,
He's already an accomplice to some pretty bad stuff
yeah, that's true.
behind that kind of grin and those eyes. He knows what's going on.
He does. Yeah.
I don't know. It takes a sociopath to do that job. I think.
Well, that might be a fair point. But let me bring it back over here to the other side, and let me pop this out and bring this over to the other side here. Okay. All right. Well, that's my presentation for today. And you guys continue on and add to it. Yell at me, tell me I'm right or wrong, whatever you want to do. But I was really surprised you dared me to do Eisenhower, dude. To be
That's an
fair.
interesting topic, and there's a lot of things that branch off of it. A
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of, it's definitely a defining time for how things were to develop in this country. That those events around that time carried all the way through into the 80s, which started to get kind of tumultuous. And I was pretty young in the 70s, what I remember of the tail end.
Me too. Yeah.
But the 80s I do remember quite well.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a very interesting time, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to experience the 80s. The 90s, if you had experienced the 80s, the 90s were a very weird time.
I can sum them up really easy. The 80s was yoo-hoo! The 90s was uh-uh. There you
It
go.
was a lot of moping,
Yeah.
and then that brings us right into the 9/11 event, which I do think is another defining moment in culturally for this country. It's a paradigm switch for this country. So you have that long stretch of time that happens, that 10 years of complacency in the 90s leading up to it. It's a go ahead.
No, I just was noticing in the chat and just looking because I've been busy. But I see DeWolf was real quiet. He was obviously watching, and he came in and he made a comment at the end, which I think is pretty interesting because I don't know if he's referring to this, but Holocomic says he looks like he reads and liked Squirrel Girl. Fair point. But DeWolf says he was not. He warned us. Well, I mean, I think I do agree. Eventually he did, but. Now, I really wish DeWolf was in here because there's a whole chunk of this conversation we didn't have today, model, and that was the Bolshevik side. That was also the Masonic side of it, right? Or at least the
And
conceit.
that might be another topic. The Bolshevik Revolution.
And I wouldn't mind to have DeWolf come in because DeWolf is a Mason. And I would love to get his take on it and have him defend it because, he knows how I feel about it. Right?
Haven't we done that before?
Yes, we did. But I mean, it would be nice to have him in the conversation regarding the Bolshevik conversation because there's a lot of people that say that is a Masonic endeavor, all of it, including Baruch and stuff, and they always bring it back to the whole Jewish thing. And to be fair, if you go back and look at a lot of people with the Rosicrucians and the Illuminati and all those kind of things, there were a lot of those Zionists involved, sure. But a lot of people throw the Masons under the bus, and although I might be able to be convinced that there is a certain high level organization that might have ties to the Masons that is no good. In general, the Masonry that I know, and I do know it, they're just people trying to help their community in general.
Right.
Uh, and
Yeah,
that's
but every organization has that group that actually really runs the show, and the Masons have that as well. They've always had that.
They have, and I'm just saying that it would be interesting to get his point of view on it, you know. And well, we'll do it at another show. We're kind of at the end here, but I'd love to bring him in for that Bolshevik conversation, because, like I said, we can't have that conversation without bringing in the whole Illuminati Masonic part of the agenda that is around it. You can't have the conversation without it. And I really loved him to come in and have and he's a very smart guy anyway. I love talking to DeWolf, but we'll have to plan that around his schedule. We know he's super busy right now. But
Every organization that exists has the ability to be infiltrated, and that's what happens. If anything is looked at and said, oh, these guys might be they might be a little bit doing a little moving and shaking,
yeah,
they're going to get people in there.
sure, yeah. Well, anyway, I don't want to get into that conversation. That's a separate conversation, and we did talk about it a little, and we had him in here for that. But I'm talking about the Bolshevik or the Marxist movement in and of itself. Anyway, we'll see if we can organize that with DeWolf, and I would love to have that conversation with him. But anyway, model. What else would you like to add? Would you like me to search anything? Would you like to bring up any imagery? Or I try to be
No.
thorough.
I think we're good. I think anything that we add now is going to go into another direction.
That's probably true. I really tried to be thorough as I could, dude. I really did. Thundero, are you done with the damn socks?
Yeah, my wife has literal. I'm not even exaggerating. We have a 4.5 foot wide dresser.
Uh-huh.
She has 4 drawers. 2 of them are length of the drawer, or the whole thing. She has an entire drawer full of socks. An entire drawer, just socks.
Yeah.
I think we need to do a TFT episode on that. Fundaro socks, TFT.
I don't have the socks. I have maybe 10 pair. Just hundreds of them.
I think I have
So
less than 10. Yeah, but that's okay. My woman has a couple of boxes of socks. So, I think it's a woman thing. It goes with the shoe collection, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It's pretty insane.
Now, DeWolf was saying he was going to come over here Discord, so I'm actually not paying attention. I'm over here on this side waiting to see if he shows up. And of course, we'd be happy to have him. Let me see here. I should probably go up to here. And DeWolf, if you're coming in, just go into the live stream waiting room, and we'll bring you over, because I don't think he has permission. Does he? He should have permission.
He should have permission. He's an original.
He's an
damn
original, yeah.
There he is.
There he
comes.
is. All
Here
right,
he
cool.
He's
All right.
coming in.
It's very, very nice.
All right, DeWolf, defend the Jews. I dare you.
No.
There.
No.
What?
Coming in.
Hey, DeWolf, how's it going, dude?
I don't see permission.
You're okay. You're in here. You're good enough. So, sir, you listened to this 2-hour debate.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
I don't hear you. What's wrong with my thing?
Oh no! Bloody!
I don't know.
He should be able
It was going so smooth. Then you wanted to add DeWolf. Now
Oh,
everything's
you hear
blowing up.
me?
Yeah, we hear you just fine, dude. Yeah.
Bloody hell! It was going so smooth. Then you wanted to add DeWolf. Now everything's blowing up. Oh, is that how I sound?
It is.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You wanted to add DeWolf. Now everything's blowing up.
Sweet.
Oh, now you got it on a loop.
That's exactly what we needed. Drop out and come back in, DeWolf. Drop out and come back
It's
in.
a great way to end.
It is a great way to end. And I'll give him 1
There, I
second,
kicked
though,
him.
because I'd
I
love to.
kicked him.
Oh, good.
Just come back in.
Booted him forever.
But, Thundera, do you have anything else to add to conversation?
No, not really. Eisenhower is a complicated man. I think he probably was a very bigoted man against German people. That's probably why he was selected to be the leader of Germany for a while, basically, or at least the part that we had control of, and the war itself. Patton, on the other hand, was the exact opposite. He didn't hate the German people at all. He, in fact, loved them. He wasn't a fan of Hitler, obviously, but he had great respect and admiration for Germany. And he saw himself as, I believe one of the words he used was not reincarnation, but basically that of the ancient warriors of old.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Right,
He had a
that's
little bit of a
that.
high opinion of himself. That's
he did.
all.
But then keep in mind, MacArthur was the same way. He didn't hate the Japanese at all.
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
quite the opposite. As a matter of fact, he was a little bit too soft-handed, some people say. Dewolf, can you hear us and speak?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, what did you think about our little presentation today?
I came in a little late. I was mowing the lawn.
Oh, that's okay. Those grasses
Oh.
need cutting.
So I thought that the picture you had up,
Mhm.
like 2 minutes prior to me talking, just putting something in the chat, I thought the picture was great.
Oh,
It's a great presentation. It was awesome.
You know, I'm quite proud of it. I tried to stay on track, and I think I did. But
I'm gonna make some broad assumptions as to what you basically did in your presentation,
please.
and then and just like I can't cover it. I'm gonna make some broad assumptions on just some of the knowledge that you brought forward. Okay, and now since you drugged me in here, if you want to ask anything specific at this point, you can go ahead and do that about what you think Eisenhower was also involved in.
Well, my conceit through the entire presentation from the beginning, because we started with the idea of his military industrial complex warning, right?
Right. Yeah.
That was the conceit from the very first frame of the presentation. And I went through showing that the man was hawkish until the very last moment before his last speech where he made that comment, right? And my conceit of it was that the man was chosen. He was groomed. He was, in essence, a puppet being controlled. And I made a lot of, I feel, very sound arguments why that is true, and that what we saw in that last 15 minutes was actually Eisenhower. That's my conceit.
Okay. I wouldn't say controlled and puppet. I would say that he was operating upon the knowledge that he knew. You know, going into the Cold War, just everyone. It was the people who like to use a big word called zeitgeist. Just the knowledge and the culture was, this is the way we operate, and we go into that way. And he was raised that way. There was a generation of people that says we fight for freedom. America is great. You know, there once was a generation like that, and so I think he went forward. Now I think he learned things as he being military. See, being military, he rose up then kind of through the ranks, and then the more you get in the military and the more you start learning, at some point you get to this area where you think, I either am going to operate and try to do something better, make a change. And being an officer like he was, you're going to do that. A lot of the rest of us enlisted guys, we usually just say, I don't want to know anything else. I don't want to know anything more. I learned enough already. Yeah. And but he didn't have that choice. So he rose up through the ranks, and of course he wanted to do something different and create some change. That's where he finally ended up.
I see.
And I think then what happened with him was he learned more of what was going on, and that's where the warning came from. That he wasn't a puppet, that he was doing what he thought was right, and then things changed within that due to his knowledge. Things changed, and then he came through saying that this is a possible problem in the future.
Well, that's an interesting take, and I would suggest that if you go back and watch the presentation, it's about an hour and 40 minutes, the actual presentation itself. I would love to have you come back for. I don't know if we'll do it next week or not. We got to discuss that. I'd love you to have to come back for the Bolshevik conversation because it ties in to today's conversation. I don't agree with what you just said about Eisenhower. But I do lay it out very clearly in that time. But I would love to have your opinion on it because you and I both know what the Masons really do. And you and I also know that the Masons get blamed for everything. right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the whole Bolshevik thing is tied directly to Masonry, dude.
Yeah.
So I would love to
Um,
have you as part of that conversation.
there's a third part to that masonry aspect. That's what they really do, what they get blamed for, and uh, how some of masonry has been steered or used by others.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, I do. But we do need to wrap it up for today. I'm glad you jumped in, though. But please watch the presentation and schedule with us so when you can do the Bolshevik conversation, because I really would love to have your opinion and insight, especially not only that you're part of that world, but also you're a military man. I think it would be great to have that opinion because none of us are. But
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
need to wrap it up. But
I think Sunday. I think I'm good for Sundays to come in on Sundays.
Okay, well, good,
So
good, good. We'll try to set it up. So, what do you guys want to do for next week, just before we get out of here?
Oh, what should we do? We
What
kind of
shouldn't we do?
well. There's a lot we shouldn't.
Well, I have the
we
list we
kinda-
wrote down.
Yeah, what was on the list? Let's go. Let's start
Okay.
there.
Well, we had movies, FBI. We did Eisenhower, comic books, music, Jackal Island, Pyramid Power, Heaven's Gate. We did William Cooper, which kind of tied into today.
Illuminati.
The Illuminati, Lost Cities, not Atlantis, Alex Jones, Edmund Bernays, and of course the Bolsheviks.
Oh, Alex Jones sounds
I
fun.
think we need to do Alex. We need to do a fun
come
one. We haven't
on.
done a fun one.
We
in a
gotta do Alex Jones. I'll pop in
Yeah.
for that. I'll have things to actually say.
If we don't do Alex Jones, he will eat your ass, Justin.
Yeah, I
Just
think we
so you
should
know.
take. I think we should take a break from some of these topics that are going to lead right back into the Bolsheviks.
No, fair enough.
That's
Let's go with Alex.
Take a week off.
No, let's do it. So next week we'll do Alex, and the week after, DeWolf will do the Bolsheviks. So it gives you 2 weeks to prepare.
okay.
Okay, cool. Well,
the Wolf
Oh,
can
you
join us
mean-
for Alex too, if he'd like.
Of course you
I
can.
think
Please
I
do.
might go do that.
But I really would love to have him involved in the Bolshevik conversation because it does
Alex
tie in.
Jones.
No.
I would love to have him involved. That would
Well,
be amazing.
seeing as Alex Jones is emulating William Cooper's certainly part of the conversation of Masonry and Illuminati and Bolsheviks, without question. So they kind of tie. But no, we'll do Alex Jones next week. We'll have fun with it because Alex is a fun character. So, all right, let everybody have their closing statements. And DeWolf is the last in, so he'll be the first out. Go ahead, dude.
Oh, sure. International Space Station gets the Crew Dragon launched on Wednesday. So everybody look forward to watching Americans launch from America by an American company.
Sweet. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been quite a while, actually. All right. Awesome. Thundero.
I just want to say something that I told Booster last night I would say at the beginning of the show. I wasn't here for the beginning of the show, so I'm going to say it now. Fuck Diamond Distribution and anybody who supports them. Good night.
Oh, jeez.
Mhm.
Jesus. Ding, ding. Model?
I won't be watching the launch into space. That's
Well, no,
my
not you.
closing statement.
Of course not, yeah. Is that it?
No, I'll probably watch and pick it apart.
Pick it apart.
He's a space denier. And good on
Oh,
that.
okay, right.
Yeah, those are fun conversations too. Anything else, Model?
That's it.
Awesome. Booster, namaste us out of here. Make yourself useful for half a second.
Me, Booster.
Yeah.
Shitting hell. Alright. Well, I'm Booster. You know who I am. I don't know why I'm here today, because I am not useful in these conversations. I know two things. I know comic books and video games. If I have a namaste, I have one of been swimming around in my own little head for a little while, right? And it's something to do with, my experiences over the past 2 years, personal experience with Comics Gate, and watching Tiger King. And I think it's a good one. Yeah,
That's a
now
conspiracy
listen,
theory in and of
listen.
itself, man.
One hell of a wrap up.
Right.
Listen, all right?
Well,
Do not let people drag you into their own personal feuds. Ever.
yeah,
Right? Because
namaste, baby.
they do not want them to, especially if they have no want to end them. If they want to carry it on, if they for some reason claim that maybe you're not a good friend to them because you don't want to be a part of their personal feud, get the hell out of there.
Sounds personal.
Preaching.
Well, namaste. And Booster, you have an entire week to study Alex Jones.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this. I've been studying him for a while now, baby.
good.
Now, what if we like get Booster a bunch of alpha male and he takes it for a week,
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
leading up to it, and he just rages on the next
That would
week.
be awesome. That would be awesome, dude.
We're gonna turn him into the Kiwi Alex Jones.
Like
There
just
you go.
fucking full of
There you
bone
go.
All right,
broth.
boys. Shaving my head. I'm gonna be doing some bench presses. I'll get on camera. Let's do this. Oil up, baby.
I'm not gonna dox him, his real name, but his real name is perfect for Kiwi Alex Jones.
It is, dude. It is actually. That's
Pumpkin
funny.
full of
Yeah.
bone broth and,
Yeah.
and super alpha
Everyone-
plus or
I
super
think
male
everyone knows
alpha
my name at this point.
or
but-
super male vitality.
Well, anyway, all right. Thank you guys very much, and looking forward to seeing your research next week. To be fair, to have today's conversation, you kind of need several centuries of historical study to really have the conversation. I get it, Alex Jones. You don't need that much, so I'm putting it on you. I'm expecting you to come out next week, dude. All right. Well, later, everybody.
Bye.
Don't talk during the
Aloha.
ending.
Said don't talk during the outro!